If you are mentally compromised, you are more susceptible to injury. Period. All right, welcome back. I'm Dr. Dustin Boston with the athletic trainer herself, Erin Ruggieri. We have some exciting news this morning for a few different reasons. We are, as you can see behind us if you're watching this, but this podcast is going to change from the Pure Athlete podcast to the Pure Athlete Playbook.
Yeah.
For a couple different reasons. Like I said, we really just want to differentiate the healthcare side from more of the entertainment community side of what we're doing as we're building this brand out.
Yeah.
But the Pure Athlete is really what's transitioning into our community from a healthcare perspective. Mental, physical, relationships, chiropractic care, things that related to PT and recovery and concussions.
Yeah.
So the Pure Athlete is building out separate from our family practice, which is Vital Performance. And now we've also found out that there is another Pure Athlete podcast, which is super cool. It's actually a former MLB baseball player, Jeff Francoeur, had a great career with the Braves.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, to eliminate confusion and with what we're all trying to do separately and together, we thought it might be a good idea to just go ahead and make it different. And we wanted to go ahead and do that by changing the name of our podcast. They did have naming rights, so to speak, first. We were both working on trademarks. Doesn't really matter. Our biggest thing is they are going to be a great resource too. So I encourage you to not only continue to follow, subscribe, and like our podcast as you see the name change, but also check theirs out.
Yeah.
They've got some cool guests. They're talking about the same things. I'm a firm believer, and we talk about this a lot, even in our practice, that if more people talk about it, it will bring more awareness.
Right.
And while we're all going to be talking about somewhat of similar things from the parenting and coaching perspective at times, there is going to be a differentiation with us being able to really dive in on more of the healthcare side, which is what you've seen with even a lot of the guests we've had. We've had sports psychologists. We've had social psychologists that has wrapped herself up in sport. We have more people on the docket that are in the training side, the mental side. And so there's so many different things that we're going to be talking about. And then as we were having our meeting, it's like the playbook just made sense. Because no matter what sport you're a part of, yes, we're heavy dance right now. I'm heavy baseball, hockey, football, and it's all starting to combine. And there's always a playbook no matter what sport you're in. So with that being said, hopefully that's well understood.
Yeah.
And this transition is going to be super fun. And so the other podcasts that we've recorded will remain up. But from here forward, the Pure Athlete Playbook is in full effect. Continue to enjoy. Today, we're just going to jump right in.
Yeah.
Now that we have that explanation out, where do we want to start, Erin?
Well, I mean, as you know, and you showed us at the office, the Daytona 500 has occurred.
All right.
Race season is officially upon us, so.
I love that you're giving me a nugget here. I know we've talked about all other sports, but racing. But yeah, super excited. Spring is here. Daytona 500 has happened. Couple friends in the field, which is super cool. But there was a lot that happened during the race. There always is in any racing event, but really at the super speedways like that, your Daytonas, Talladegas. There's some heavy hits that be taken. They always talk about the big one.
Yeah.
And so real quick, I'm going to kind of transition into our deep dive and keep looping this back like we do.
Yeah.
Because this is going to even have why we've created the evaluation we have in the office and why we always talk about creating resources for student athletes and their parents to bridge the gap. And so let's make light of why that matters as far as the Daytona 500, because the evaluation that we do in our practice is very important because we're able to analyze athletes with technology, with data, and give a report to train them better, but also do foundational testing for things like concussion. And that's a big conversation, especially in the world of racing, because if you see the hit that Ryan, I almost said Dave Blaney, that's his dad. That Ryan Blaney, current or reigning NASCAR champion, took twice.
Yeah.
One during the duel over the week, and then towards the end of the race, he was running top 5. Another big hit, another crash. And if you watch the slow motion in that cockpit, and to realize how far they flex and how far their head can go forward, I've been there before too. I remember one of the hardest hits that I took on dirt track racing was I got taken out and put into the front stretch wall, and man, it is a hit.
Yeah.
And to look back at that camera footage, and you are strapped in tight, and there's times, most of the time, you get in a wreck like that, you grab your belts and you tuck your chin. And you try to stay somewhat as loose as possible so you're not so rigid.
Yeah.
But it happens so fast, and to see how far, even though you're cinched down, your head goes forward towards that steering wheel has a big effect with, whiplash, cervical spine, thoracic spine, even your hips as you're sitting in the seat. But also you've got the headrests and, all that force, concussion opportunities there. And so with the foundational, there's things you can do post, you can do SCAT testing and things like that, but also having a baseline for concussions before things like that ever happen. And that's just in the racing world. I mean, these guys are wearing helmets, and you get your bell rung, like you can still have a concussion with an $8,000 helmet on your head.
Yeah.
And so, but even these student athletes that are taking all these head balls, or the football, the football impacts, hockey, gymnasts and dancers falling and slapping their heads off the ground, or cheerleaders stunting and coming down on a fall or hitting each other as they're moving their heads. That is one reason, even racing guys, and I have a few of those under care, some of the local guys under care, that we're going to start doing some of that so we can analyze even with them and put them through that evaluation so we can have data. God forbid something like that happens. Again, just allowing them to be healthy, but make sure they are okay and make sure they can return appropriately. And if they do have a concussion protocol, whether racing, football, basketball, baseball, it's so prevalent right now, can we morally, ethically, clinically bring them back faster?
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into that. But, as we do, kind of shift the mindset of how can we take care of ourselves better, it's not from a reactive standpoint, it's from a creative standpoint.
Yeah, and I think watching it, the hits that you're talking about are very similar to that of football linemen. And really, like you're talking about hockey and soccer. I mean, football and hockey, yes, they have helmets, but soccer players don't wear helmets, and it's the same exact force. It doesn't matter that it's like an impact versus a ball. It's still a force, an impact, a pressure on the cervical spine, and it just leads to so many other things that you don't even realize. I mean, dancers, cheerleaders, we do things on our head. Yeah. And you just don't understand the amount of pressure you're putting on that structure, especially whenever it's on cement, or even Marley is super hard. You're not on a mat all the time. And so your body has to be prepared for that. So I think from someone who is newer to the racing world, we're almost a year in of me learning about the race world, I didn't ever realize that. So I think it's important that they do have access to these kinds of things. And
you've been a part of the racing world before. You were a twinkle in Mom's eye.
You're right. I just didn't know.
Tell us Legendary Bev's tie to the racing world.
Yeah, my mom was a trophy girl at Tri-City Speedway,
which is where I currently race most often.
Yes. So she loves the racing.
So you've been a part of racing for a very long time and never really
didn't even really know it, That, dog shows, all the secret talents.
Well, also, too, I think you have a somewhat unique story, and I don't want to say condition. I don't like condition that you can share with people as far as why it's important to be evaluated. Because had you probably been evaluated sooner, in the upper cervical specialization of imaging and structure and function, they would have probably found sooner. But why don't you share a little bit, because this is huge on people that we haven't found one since we've started the Pure Athlete evaluation. Thank God.
Yeah.
But we will, and that's okay, because then we'll know ahead of time. But why don't you share a little bit about what you have going on?
Yeah. So about 3-4 summers ago, I had a migraine that kind of presented as a stroke. I was at work at a PT clinic, and, folding towels, writing exercises down, and my writing was slanted. And I obviously was something's not right. So I drove myself to the nearest urgent care because my mom was working, my brother was at work.
And mom being a nurse.
Yes, my mom
being that was obviously the first call.
Yes, so I got into urgent care, and the the doctor who was on call or whatever was like, is your eye always droopy like that? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. No. And so I FaceTime my mom at work. She's like with a little baby.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I look normal? She's like, no.
Oh, no.
So we called my brother because he worked the closest. They took me to the ER. I wasn't having a stroke, but it was presenting as one. Like all the tests were negative, the CTs and stuff were negative, but I was still acting like it. It felt like what I would think.
Hallmark signs and symptoms.
Yeah, and strokes run in my family. My mom's had one before, so they were super cautious with that. And I undergo lots of imaging, MRIs, whatever you call it. I have a Chiari malformation, so it is my cerebellum. I'm just too smart. It protrudes through that hole in the back of your head. So it creates a bunch of pressure in the back of your head, migraines, things like anxiety, balance problems, all kinds of things that I'd been having my whole life and didn't really know why. Right. And I had been put on medicine for all of those things. So then after that, they wanted me to get a surgery to get it taken out. There's huge risks with that. And I was like, I'm just not getting brain surgery. At the time, I was a junior in college. Yeah. So I was still a very high-level athlete, and I didn't have 6 months to take off from that. I was put on a bunch of migraine medicines. Nothing really ever worked. I had a rescue medication for a migraine. It would make my hands go numb, so clearly can't take that while I'm trying to dance as well. Right. And what made it a little bit worse is that those symptoms would come back when I was super stressed, if I didn't get enough sleep, things like that. So, I'm a college student on a very high dance team and a very rigorous degree that I was pursuing. So those really didn't go away. I had really accommodating teachers and coaches for all of that. Yeah. But I had literally tried everything other than the surgery until I got my x-rays taken here. And really since about 3 months into getting adjusted, probably 2 times a week, 2 to 3, I really don't get migraines anymore.
And now you just lay on the table and kick your feet.
Yep, I do. I'm like, da-da-da-da-da.
And not necessarily because you have a migraine, but because...
just prevention. I make sure that I'm kind of on top of everyone here getting adjusted, but I'm like, all right, everyone, down. But... Yeah.
And, the Arnold Chiari malformations, there's a few different classifications of them. And so what you're, kind of what you were saying, and to loop this back around into the racing conversation and why it's so important to be evaluated, not just for that, but to have a baseline of your upper cervical spine concussion protocol and those kinds of things before things like this happen. But with an Arnold Chiari malformation, the foramen magnum, which is the hole at the bottom of the skull where the cord comes out of, the cerebellum, the posterior inferiormost portion of the brain, will also try to protrude down through that from pressure, or from maybe you do have more brains than most, and maybe the structure is larger, or maybe sometimes that'll happen early or during an illness of some sort where there's a lot of inflammation in the skull, and it will start to press the brain down. But it will show the hallmark signs and symptoms of a stroke because you're putting so much compression on the brainstem area, the ventral dorsal columns, the cranial nerves that come off. So that's why you see the trigeminal effect of the eye drooping or the lips drooping.
It's this side always. Yeah, what I've been told is in the birthing process, that's when it happened. Or not happened, but started to occur because I was born without a heartbeat. They had to revive me, all of the things. I'm just a miracle.
We all are, but you.
My mom was a high risk pregnancy. She was 40 when she had me. I was supposed to be in the NICU. They sent me home because my mom was a NICU nurse. So it goes all the way back to then. I mean, we say this all the time. We can't pinpoint when these things that we're seeing on x-rays happened. We haven't followed you your whole life, but if I had to be a betting woman, that would be probably when it was.
And so that's why, we do, through our evaluation at the Pure Athlete and at Vital Performance is, and why it's a part of the playbook is because it's important to have that evaluated, because God forbid you have that malformation and don't know it. It can cause some rigorous effects that could lead to big injuries, long-term deficits, or, in some cases too, a misclassification of diagnosis where then you get treated accordingly. And not that it's anybody's fault, but it can happen. When you have hallmark signs and symptoms that show up like that, it is real easy to be like, I know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
There's a small percentage of a chance it could be something else, but looks like a stroke, acts like a stroke, smells like a stroke.
Yeah.
But guess what? It's not a stroke. So with all athletes and student athletes that we encourage you, and, we're willing to go across the country to do these. And we do a lot of them in our community currently.
Yeah.
But that's just to kind of bring it full circle. That's why we wanted to talk about it, is because that upper cervical spine is so crucial. If I was limited to adjust one area, it would be the upper cervical spine. They say you can adjust 1 to 2 bones. Where would they be? C1, C2 all day long. So with that being said, it also has a lot to do with coordination, balance, proprioception, where your body is in space, reaction time.
Yeah.
There's a lot that maybe you don't have that malformation. Doesn't mean there's still not pressure in the upper cervical spine. And how can you, one, perform better, but also have a lot of prevention in your corner, and also recovery time.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of athletes that say they suffer from headaches, migraines, allergies, sinus issues, numbness and tingling in the fingers, pain between the shoulder blades. Like, that's all upper cervical issues. And then you add an impact like that, or you add repetition of head balls, or, clashing with helmets, or, being hit from the side and lateral flexion issues. It's just so important. And, thank God Ryan is safe. He's okay.
Yeah.
He came out of the infield care center perfectly.
Yeah.
Well, I say perfectly fine. He's a little shook up and sore, but he is okay. So that's cool. And there's a lot of guys that took hits over the weekend.
Yeah.
There's truck race, there's Xfinity race, there's NASCAR race, ARCA race there as well. It's inevitable on any track. You got 40 of us egotistical, competitive people that want to go to the front. And in those scenarios late in the race, it's more often than likely to happen. But point being, no matter what sport you play, having an evaluation done, knowing how your body functions, responds, and then having the data pre and post crash, accident, trauma, incident, injury is great to see where you line up post and how you're recovering going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it should be no different than football. I mean, every athlete I know at least in Missouri, gets physicals. They have to get a physical to get that little signature, the check mark saying that they can play sport. And I don't honestly know if racers even have to be held to that standard of having that.
Yeah, there's I don't know what all is involved in the physical.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask some of the guys. Hopefully I get the opportunity to see some of them this year. I'm sure I will.
Yeah.
And just kind of ask them. I think that's a great question. Ideally, maybe I'll ask, Kyle or Ricky and see if I can. I've got a friend who's friends with a lot of guys in NASCAR that, maybe I can just have that conversation and just understand what it looks like. I know they have to do a pretty extensive physical.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's more of just like your stereotypical medical physical, and a couple other things. Do they do I always forget, is it impact or scat? What's the pre?
So impact is on the computer one, scat's the paper one.
Okay. But doing a foundational concussion assessment, I'd imagine they do.
Yeah.
I don't want to speculate, so I'll find out.
Yeah.
I'll just
I think that'd be cool to know. Because I know, we have done a couple this week, just the normal physicals. But, we all know that those are kind of just a cross off, a check off. When I was in high school, I'd get mine from the ranky-dank people down the street that could do it for $10 because they're really not actually looking for anything.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Do you have any skin lesions? Do you have what kind of surgeries have you had? But now it's nice to see. Well, I don't know if it's nice to see. I'm excited and proud of what we're creating on a functional side to be able to give that. That way your $20 physical has a lot more value and data that is dynamic with your athlete as they continue to grow as well. So
and to me it just makes sense. Like, you're going to go to your family care provider for sicknesses or other things, but you should go to people who specialize in the body, the systems, the musculoskeletal system before you go somewhere else as well.
Yeah, I was at a dinner last night, and I'm glad you said that. And I was very humbled to hear this last night. But Coach Malik Radigan here at Francis House Central had said something to me. They had a very cool dinner for sponsors last night at a local restaurant, and he had said, it's nice to have people like you in the community, and people like Tross, who are just down the road as well. And he's like, it's nice to know that not only can you do what you do, but you specialize in athletes. He's like, you have honestly taken over your area or our community, and making sure that people know you see a lot of student athletes, and that specialization is key. So like you said, not only, it's not just about chiropractic care. It's not just about injury recovery. It's about a lifestyle change and us putting together. He's like, what you guys have put together with your evaluation and how you see people. He's like, you have 8 of our athletes at our school under care. And I know at least, I talk to 3 of the parents all the time, and they are in love with you guys. And that's super humbling to hear. So we appreciate that. But we also we want to display that because we do want, and we're going to take this nationwide, where we can come do these evaluations for your athletes, no matter where you are. Give us a call. We'll figure out how to do it. Get your team together, get a whole club together. We're going to be in talks with a couple different clubs on a couple different sports to be able to provide these to their athletes. So it's just, it's very cool to see. And I have other docs asking me too, what are you doing? Can you teach me how to do it? Are you willing? What's the future of this look like? And so that's why, again, it did make sense to also change the name of the podcast because it's a playbook now, and it's super humbling to see that it's taking effect, and we can relate scenarios like this to bring it full circle, but also bring light in other sports and areas. They'll be like, wait, that can apply to us too. And we're really unapologetically trying to reach everything from freaking croquet to NASCAR. Like, I don't care where it falls. If there's a scoreboard involved and you're an athlete, and you're being judged, whatever it is, if you're competing, we can help, and you should value yourselves. And parents, just know that you can have something that you can trust and get data on your student athlete. It's available now.
Yeah, and I think the perfect place to start with, if you're like, not really sure about them, is scheduling a recovery night. We do full recovery nights for entire teams. They get access to our entire recovery hallway. They get access to us that night. And I think that's just the perfect place to come and ask your questions. You can bring your parent. Just say, like, what do you do? Who are you? Like, are you good people? And you kind of can feel that out, that in person versus a screen. I think we're pretty cool. And it's been pretty cool so far because we've done a bunch of dance teams, and it's super cool for me to see, like, the next generation of people who can change what dance gets in this society, and it's been really cool.
Yeah. And the other thing you can do is if you are not in our local community and you have questions or think you might want to have this done or want to learn more, you're more than welcome to, DM us. Like, we're not untouchable. We might be busy. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. We answer all of but we're going to be launching a new website here soon that's going to have a lot of access. So we've got the Vital Performance website. We're going to have, the other website that we will release here in the next probably week or so. But even calling and talking to Sam, maybe you don't want to talk to us yet, and be like, let me vet you a little more. Do you have any people in your office that I can talk to? And jumping on a call with Sam and letting her explain a little bit more and answering your questions. We'd be more than happy to do that because it's a big deal, and it's nice to see that people are magnetizing towards this and at least saying, tell me more.
Yeah. All right, Sam, hit it.
Hang on a second. We just blew Sam's itinerary out of the water too. I'm looking at this and I'm like, yep, nope. So either put us back on track, or are you pivoting? Are you being dynamic? Go ahead.
I love this. I can sit and listen to you guys talk all day, honestly. Yes, please, if you have any questions, please call. I would love to answer, as Dr. Dustin said. But they're great. I can vet them for you for sure. But we're going to pivot and talk about Miss Caitlin Clark. Pivot. I don't know if y'all watch a lot of women's basketball. I love Caitlin. I love her. She is probably one of the best basketball players of all time. And she's only 22 years old.
Yeah, that was super cool to see what she had done. I used to when UConn was on it, and UConn's really always on a tear, it seems like, but when UConn was really, really high, when they had Diana Taurasi, I don't know if you guys are old enough for Diana Taurasi. No disrespect, Diana, you were awesome. We're in the same era.
Love you so much, Diana.
But when they were forces, I can't say I've watched a lot of women's basketball, but I did watch a decent amount in that era. But that kind of record, I know they're trying to put asterisks by it and whatever. It really doesn't matter. It's like she's a phenomenal athlete.
It's crazy. She scored 49 points that game. She scored 23 in the first quarter.
Homegirl pulled up from like half court to hit the shot
for the
logo a logo
and
3.
She did it 3 more times that game.
She was on pace to score 92 points that game.
Yeah, and it's just like, so to see the talent that she has and the respect she has for the craft, how she carries herself in the media and in public, and I mean, huge fan. Not too far from us at Iowa.
No, she's not. And I think the coolest part about her is she's like, her main mission is just being a role model for little girls who play basketball or even who don't play basketball. There's so many videos of like little teams watching her make history, and that's, I think, just so cool that they get to have that growing up too.
I'm trying to get back on I've never really used X. Formerly known as Twitter.
X, formerly known as Twitter. We love
so
it.
I'm trying to get back on that and see what that's all about. Don't really know how the hell to use it, but I am at Dustin Boston on the X.
Ooh, we love.
It's funny that you say role model because this is literally what I posted this morning. For those of you that can't see it, maybe we can cut it in, but it's right here. I don't think you can zoom in and see that. But it goes back to, and it was a little bit about Caitlin Clark because I knew you were going to bring this up on the podcast, but I was also listening to something like I do every morning. I have a little routine myself. And one thing that just came to me is it's like, at the end of the day, no matter what your position, what classification, sport, doesn't matter. Everyone is a role player. There's people that can do it all, but none of them are required to do it all. You can't be a center and a point guard. Could you do it? Yeah, if you needed to, but everybody is a role player.
Yeah.
Leaders are also role models because we talk about it being an action word. And so it's like, you want to change the perspective or get into that leadership role or, listen to somebody like Caitlin Clark is, she does want to be a role model. She does want to take probably women's sports and young girls to the next level and be a resource for them. That is a role player who is a damn good role model. Yeah. And that's why she is a leader.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about it before with Connor Bedard too. Like, they're both very young in their sport and making such big moves this year. There is a lot of pressure that comes with that. And I do think that Caitlin has a little bit more of pressure because she is in women's sports. I mean, I always go back to the gymnastics people who have been role models, the Simone Biles, the Allie Raismans of the world. And they really just change what it looked like to be a woman athlete. So I think it's really cool that she kind of gets to put her name by these incredible people.
And in a forgive me, because I don't mean this any certain way, but and in one of the top 3 high-profile sports.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like, especially recently, our subliminal effort unapologetically is going to get all athletes the resources, things they deserve. Yeah. We're very close to the dance world, but she is in one of the elite 3 sports, and it's cool to see all of the reach out that community is giving her. Yeah. And here's what I want to encourage people is it's not just about her. She is displaying this for an entire sport, an entire culture. And really, it's not just women's sports. And, I'm not a huge division person, and there's guys and there's girls. I don't get too wrapped up into the politics of that. Because at the end of the day, I'd love to hear what Kobe would have to say if he was still here watching this. But you still have similar people like that. Like, there's so much respect from both sides. It's like, let's not create a separation of guys or girls or whatever, sport to sport. It's like, who gives a crap? She's perfected. Well, she is always trying to perfect her craft as a basketball player, but as an athlete and as a person, that's what we need to be talking about. And she respects what she does. She is out to do good things. She's getting applause, high fives, and ass slaps from everybody across both lines, whether it's male or female. So it's been really cool to see the outreach. But here's what I want to say is, let that continue. Like, don't let it just be a fad because she dropped 49 and 4,000 points or whatever it was, 3,580 something, whatever. 3,543 points.
You weren't too far off.
So let that continue to be celebrated and also be an example of how to carry yourself, and let her be a resource. Yeah. Like, just keep pointing people her direction and just have respect for that side of the sport.
Yeah, and I think even not in like the basketball realm, but even there's been other leagues who have made videos and posts congratulating her, other athletes. I mean, yes, Angel Reese does play basketball as well, but she was like the first person to on X like tweet, I guess, is it X? I don't really know. Her about this accomplishment. And I know the NFL posted a whole video. So it's really cool, just like the sports world, the professional sports world kind of coming together because of her.
And literally just this week at one of our recovery nights, we had found out that, you know, she does work with some sort of, I don't know if I want to jump to sports psychologist. I'm pretty sure that's what they are. I won't quite release the name because I want to have all my facts straight. But what I do know is fact is she works with the same kind of sports counseling, sports psychologist group that a couple local schools here in the St. Louis area utilize. And so that's super cool because now you're starting to hear, and it's starting to go a little more public of, she's not seeing them for a reactive reason. It's a part of her athlete lifestyle, which, what do we say here? Physical, mental, relationships, the three pillars of being a pure athlete. And what it looks like as in the healthcare setting, it's a lifestyle. It's not a reactive critical healthcare system.
Yeah, I think it also just goes to show you that you have to have your group, your care staff, your support team. Like she has probably that mental health consultant, we'll say. She probably also has like her AT, maybe a chiropractor. She has her coach. She probably has other things, other people to help her along the way too. She's created her kind of circle.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have a chiropractor, Caitlin, we got you. Be more than happy to help.
I want to go to Iowa.
Yeah, go to Iowa. Basketball teams, dance team, football team, soccer. Just do it all.
I do know their coach. Yeah, their dance coach.
Hey, there we go. Link in the bio.
Link in the bio.
All right. Where else? Where you want to go now?
Let's see. We'll finish off with a question.
Lunch? No, just
not yet. We can finish off with a question. So the question this week we have is kind of what we've been talking about. So we'll bring it all full circle. How can chiropractic care support my child's overall athletic development and longevity in their sport?
You want to start with the semi non-biased answer, or do you want me to lead?
No, go for it.
Ah, dang! I was hoping you would lead.
We'll ask the expert.
Okay. Chiropractic's overall athletic development and longevity in their sport. Well, just starting with the basics of structure and function, and to know foundationally what the structure of your student athlete's body, from literal structure, bone structure, biomechanics, to the neurology and how they're functioning, is huge as far as athletic development. Because I mean, you know, hips, pelvis, depending on if they're turned or rotated, has a huge effect on the hip joint itself. I just made a post yesterday. Seeing our 6th athlete with a hip injury, which is going to happen. Why have we seen 6 in the past month? And they're like, oh, what's the reason? I'm not looking for a reason. It's because we were able to help the last 5.
Yeah.
But could that be a structural issue? We did find on all of them some structural issues that could be developmental problems that we could have found sooner, which is why those evaluations are important. But the chiropractic lifestyle gives the opportunity to see those things sooner. Just because you don't feel it, they're not there, they're not injured, doesn't mean they're not prevalent in the body right now. So just skeletal maturity would be probably the short answer. Skeletal maturity, biomechanics, making sure that they're moving properly. You see all these kids with turned in toes, or you see them walk around like this. Is there scoliosis in play?
Right.
So developmentally, it's huge structurally. Now, neurologically, balance, coordination, proprioception. There is so much on the neurology side where there are studies that show, there's a baseball study out there of increase in velocity by pitchers after being adjusted, like right now. Recovery, you know, if you're built on a proper foundation, when something happens, it's much easier to recover. And so just from that standpoint, like the physical standpoint that people might stereotype chiropractors into, and I think even more of the stereotype is it is a preventative, and I'm going to say lifestyle again, because oftentimes it's very reactive.
Yeah.
You know, oh, he's rolled his ankle 8 times in the past 2 years. Why? Well, he plays sports. Is there a strength issue? Is there a biomechanical issue? So then we go back to that. But also what we're doing, you know, in our practice, at Vital Performance and then through the Pure Athlete is the other pillars of the mental and relationships that is still part of the chiropractic lifestyle and developing them mentally. And, you know, having the relationship with somebody they can trust is huge, having in their corner as they develop their career.
Yeah.
It's not always, it's not so much, the majority is not so much about their physical being all of the time. There's other dynamics in play when it comes to developing a student athlete around their health. Physical is only one pillar, which is why we have three.
Yeah.
So that's a roundabout around the bush without having a direct question of why does that, or how does that support?
Right.
Mental physical relationship, structural foundation, proper structures, proper function leads to less vulnerability of major injuries, but also when those things do happen, one, you have somebody you can trust, but then we can morally, ethically bring you back faster, recover quicker. As I'm getting ready to launch a whole nutritional phase, because I had 3 parents just last night ask me like all these powders and what do they eat and drink and all these pre-workouts and like what are they supposed to eat under the game. And I told her, I said, you parents are actually feeding them the wrong way before the game starts.
Right.
And she like looked at me and stepped back and I was like, but it's not your fault.
Right.
And she's like, that's what I'm talking about. She's like, I have my eyebrow raised, but I don't know what to tell them because I don't know what's out there, what to trust, what to feed them, when to feed them. It's like, oh, let's eat all this pasta before the game. Well, you're wasting that. There's a time frame to do that in. You're too late. So there's a lot on the chiropractic lifestyle that can help the development of student athletes.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Does mental health affect physical health? Like, does what's going on in your brain affect actually like your physicality, and can that be a part of why some of these athletes are being injured?
Do bears shit in the woods?
Perfect.
It does. It really does.
100%.
You know, there's a level of confidence it takes to execute everything that you do, no matter what kind of athlete you are. And, you know, if we want to go back to the racing side of the things, or as an old Top Gun quote, if you will, as well, if you think you're dead. And so having that confidence in that mind frame, and what I mean by that is not literally, I mean, I think you guys know what I mean, is it's like that stutter, that hesitancy will put you in a more precarious situation. It's like, oh man, I don't know if I want to take this corner back on. I got to run a good route. And you go 80% trying to be perfect, and you roll an ankle, or you misstep, or you get freaking clocked because of the confidence of, or the lack mindset, or whatever it might be, the nervousness, or the lack of preparation in the film room. It has a huge effect as far as injuries. If you are mentally compromised, you are more susceptible to injury. Period.
Yeah, and there doesn't need to be a label on like, oh, I have a mental health condition. You can have poor mental health, poor mental toughness, without having a diagnosed condition, let's say. And that really just affects really everything. I mean, I've said it before, like the body is more likely to get injured when it's under stress. So if you're already adding a game time high stakes situation, your body's going to be stressed. It's natural to feel stressed, but if you're putting something else on top of it, like outside factors, you're just asking for yourself to get injured. So it's really just important. Like your mind is any athlete's best asset. It has to be the thing that is trained just as much, if not more, than your physical capacity. And I think that is kind of being talked about more in athletics. I mean, we see teams are getting sports psychologists and consultants coming in for those things, but knowing that you can't wait until a week before the game, a week before competition season starts to have those resources, because it's going to take time to implement something that you haven't been doing your whole life. Especially when we get into professional or college sports, you're getting athletes who have been doing something since maybe they were 2. So you have to break their habits kind of. And that's going to take longer when it comes to that skill of athlete.
What are your dancers not allowed to say?
That they're nervous.
Can't say it out loud.
Nope.
Yeah, one bad orange affects the bucket. But here's what I will say on that is, if you are nervous, you have people you can tell that to. But do not try to emotionally hijack your team members looking for validation and support, because it will drop their level too. So have the respect for your team and yourself to take it to a coach, or to, you know, to open up to somebody on the outside of the team to be able to get the help you need, because they want to help you and they can't read your mind. And then, you know, then the team can be informed appropriately to lift you up during the process if necessary. But yeah, as an athlete, say something. As a parent, take it seriously, ask better questions, get better answers. Don't pry. We'll come out with, maybe we'll do a webinar with a couple parents where we'll talk about, what are some things you're seeing with your athlete, and have a discussion on how can we ask better questions and ease into that conversation.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times with young athletes, they confuse the feeling of adrenaline with nerves.
Yeah.
That's
good.
It really, there is a thin line. Yes, you are nervous because you have so much adrenaline. But at the same time, that's why my rule of not saying you're nervous began, because most of the time they're just so hyped up and ready to go that their body is perceiving it as nerves.
Yeah. And nerve is cortisol.
Yeah.
Adrenaline is hype.
Yeah. And so that's why it's so important that you do prepare them in that way. Like raising their adrenaline and their nerves as much as you can before the real day of competition is essential to them knowing that, okay, no, I'm prepared. It's just adrenaline and I know how to prepare it. That goes with any sport.
Yeah, absolutely. What we got? Any other questions?
No, I think that's a wrap.
Ask better questions, get better answers. That was a good one. Awesome. Well, with that being said, let's jump into the rest of our day.
Yeah.
I will still have a couple more guests lined up, which is cool. We're working on a few more. We're now being reached out to. I was just the podcast I was on, Krakenback's podcast, that was released about a week or two ago. Great listen. Go listen to that podcast. Super excited for what's coming. Let's have a great week. It is 70 degrees here in February in the St. Louis area.
Yeah.
I almost wore shorts. What else? I don't think we missed anything today.
No.
You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Have a great rest of your week, y'all. See ya.